Hello folks, Jack here, Preacher Guitars. Welcome to a Wednesday live video. Now, in the spirit of the Grand Tour, if anyone's watched that show, we're going to try and be ambitious today, but hopefully not rubbish. We've got a lot of different little technical things that are going to be going on today, which will hopefully make this a very pleasant experience for you. Let's just hope they work. So hopefully, thus far, we've got an improvement on last week in that you can hear the guitar and you can hear me talking in both speakers. Hopefully we've solved that. Let us know in the live chat though what you're hearing as we go. This is all still a work in progress. We're still learning as we go. But thank you for joining for another Wednesday Live. So what we normally do here is a Q&A, but we're going to kind of put that on pause a little bit today because we've got the team from TwoNotes in the live chat, and they're going to be answering any questions relating to specifically the Capture X, but I'm going to cover a couple of different products as well as we go. You know, those are the best people to possibly ask any question to. And if you want some actual demonstrations as well, I'm going to be on hand to do that. So, all being well, it's going to be a good one. So anyway, hope you've had a good week. As I say, these things are pretty good fun usually. We like to do these live Q&As as a way of just kind of reaching out to as many of you as possible, and it seems that a lot of people are on board with that now, which is good. So I think I'm just going to get straight into it this week. Like I say, this is a TwoNotes Takeover special. So if you're watching the live chat already, you'll see the guys are in there. Thankfully, as they are audio specialists, they are good people to advise on the sound of the video. And hopefully we're rolling. So all the guitar tones that you are hearing this week, and indeed last week if you saw that one, are courtesy of the Capture X, which is up here, this little white box. If you don't know what that is, basically, I'm going to just surmise it very quickly, but I'm going to elaborate on what it does as we go on. I'm using it today to take care of everything that happens after the amplifier. So I'm plugged in with this and a couple of pedals into this little boogie, and I'm purposefully using this teeny tiny boogie that I'm going to talk about in a little bit because I want to show you just how powerful a unit like this can be, even with a tiny amp, in getting some big sounds. So when I say it's replacing everything that comes after this, it's replacing the speaker cabinet, the microphone setup, any other post effects, and that's coming through straight to our interface that you're hearing in the video. So if that's something that you've been looking for, if you've been looking for a way to record with a valve amp at home, this is genuinely one of the best solutions to be able to do that in a very compact way. It's also in quite an affordable way. The links for this product will be in the live chat, so if you want to find out more about actually purchasing one of these as we go, then check in the live chat. There'll be a link. Aidan is on hand to put in any links of stuff that we're talking about today, so you're gonna be able to find out exactly what the deal is with this. But I'm just going to walk you through, kind of give you some practical demonstrations, and as I say, the guys from TwoNotes are in the chat to answer your questions. So this is where the ambitious part of things comes in. I'm going to try and show you now the app, the Torpedo Remote App on my iPad here, which hopefully you should be seeing any moment. Okay, so this shows you what you can do with the remote when it's connected wirelessly to an iPad, an iPhone, or your Mac. So I've called up a preset here using a Shure 1x12 open back cab, and you can see down here at the bottom left there's mic A, mic B, so there's two mics on this setup. This is kind of how it comes out the box as well, so there's very little configuring to be done here, but the Shure is a cab that I've added in separately. I'm going to walk you through how to change them as we go, but I've called up on this one because I've got the Mesa set for a nice clean sound. So just as an example, once again, of what that sounds like, this is with the Shure cab, and then I'm going to change the cab on the screen, which will show you not only how easy it is to do that, but also how drastically it changes the sound. Here we go. Hopefully I'm back. So what you'll have seen me doing there is messing around with changing to a different type of cab, and I also messed around with muting each of the two microphones. So you can either have two mics like I've got set up right now, mic A and mic B, or you can have them independent of one another. You can, of course, change the mic type, which I'm going to do in a little bit. But hopefully you'll have heard there, even just changing from the Shure 112 model to this, which I think is a TwoNotes stock model, which looks to me to be some kind of Fender Deluxe 112 style cab, with some different microphones as well, which you can see here. This is called the Nightfall. I'm not exactly sure what that's referring to a model of, but sounds pretty good to me anyway. So just by changing to a different 1x12 cab, it's a drastic tonal difference, and it's really easy to do. All you have to do is press this cabs button at the bottom here. We're still on the screen. Hopefully you can still see that. Yeah, so I've come up here to the list of the cabs that are loaded on. Let's go back to a 1x12. So there's the Shure that I had at the start, and Vibro V30 is what's underneath. Okay, so that's kind of the clean end of things. I want to spend a bit more time with this Bella cab and actually delve into showing you what the settings on the app do. I guess I'll get more of the technical stuff out of the way now, and then we'll come on to just hearing some sound clips a little bit later. So, by default, this particular setting's got a pair of 414 microphones on it. Let me just play around now. So keep your eye on this mic A and mic B section. I'm just going to try out different mics. I'm going to try and move the axis or the distance of each of the mics, and I'll change the levels as well, which are controlled by these faders here. Okay, right. Let's see what we got, and then I'll play and mess things up. as I said, yeah, I was going to mess that up, which I did quite promptly. It's very easy to just change things around so drastically. What you want to do is just kind of play around. You find the mics that you like the best for a particular cab. So I kind of ended up back with the 414 on the main mic, and then using a 421 as the secondary mic. And hopefully you'll have seen that I also messed around with the distance and the axis of those mics. So, it's what I like about the TwoNotes software is that if you are using an iPad or something, it's just an absolute breeze to change this stuff. Because normally you have kind of fixed options in a lot of modeling software, which makes you a little bit limited because you've only got what's been put into the software. But with this, you've got infinite values that you can change. I don't know if you can still see this, but I'm changing the axis of the mic. And you can see at the top of the screen that it's actually changing with a percentage value. So you've got kind of 100 different increments of whatever parameter you're trying to change, which I think is actually quite unique to some of the modeling game, especially when it comes to speaker and cabinet modeling, because normally, like I say, you're working with impulse responses, which are just on or off, basically. It's more binary. This is much more linear. So that's just the mic side of things. But with the cabinets, if I'm going to tap down here at the bottom of the screen to the cab section, I've now got, there's more available, but this is just what we've loaded into this unit. 1x12s, 2x12s, and 4x12s. Let's go to a 212. And you can see there's a mix here of stuff that's stock with the unit, and we did load up some extra TwoNotes profiles, like these Sir ones here, and a couple of others that you can see. Let's try the Voice 30. I'm not sure what that... Okay, it's a Vox. So, let's just see how it changes the tone. I'm just going to move to the bridge pickup, not going to touch the amp or anything else. This is just using a different speaker impulse. That is cool, to be able to change the character of your amp without touching it via the speaker cabinet model. That's really cool. And I first discovered that a few years ago. I used to have a TwoNotes Torpedo Live, which was the rack unit. And it basically did this job. So any of the TwoNotes products, which I will talk about a little bit more in a little while, because there's other stuff that does this as well. But the Capture X is kind of the most complete package, we feel, at the moment. But this, just the way that changing the cabinet really impacts the tone of the amp, if you weren't, if you didn't know otherwise, that could be a Vox. And a lot of that is down to the speaker cabinet doing its job. It's not just the amp. And granted, this amp does have EL84s in it, but that's kind of by the by, because that's just, what you're hearing really is a Boogie voiced amp through a Vox style cabinet. And it's just amazing to me how drastically it changes the tone. And that's without getting into, as you can see on the screen up here, post effects. Like there's EQ, which I haven't switched in right now, but there's 5-band EQ to mess with. There's reverb on board as well, which you're not hearing right now, but I can get onto that in a second. So basically just a bunch of different controls are accessible right here. And then, of course, you can store as many presets of those sounds as you like. So that's just kind of messing around with some cleaner tones. And I wanted to start with clean because, once again, speaker modeling, if you want to call it that, is not always that forgiving to cleaner, what I would say, higher headroom signals, which a clean amp tends to have. Sounds fine with higher gain a lot of the time, but sometimes clean amps can sound a little bit stale, a little bit stagnant. Not the case with the Captor X. So, despite having said that, let me show you some driven tones as well. I've got the second channel here, I think dialed in for a bit more of a kind of higher gain boogie sound. So I don't want the Vox cab anymore. I want to change to a 4x12. So I'm going to go back to the cab menu. Is it okay, guys? You still seeing this? Cool. Okay, so let's go for the Recto traditional slant cab. So I've got 4x12 now. You can see the mics have changed, the cab's changed, everything's changed. Here's what it sounds like on the lead channel. Hopefully that gives you an idea that it's a totally different sound. And by the way, the reason I'm starting this way and kind of running through the heavy-hitting technical side of things straight away is because I want to impress upon you that I'm doing all of this with an iPad, that tiny box there, and this ridiculously tiny box here as well. So we often hear about attenuators being able to use amps at home more easily, which, yeah, that's true. I'm going to come on a little bit later with the Orange, which is a 100-watt amp, and I'm going to use it to basically funnel that massive power into the computer. And you can attenuate it into a real cabinet as well, which I'll talk about in a second. But I think it's equally impressive to have a small amp, which I'm sure a lot of us do. A lot of us have got these prized little small valve amps. But this doesn't sound like that. This doesn't sound like a small amp anymore. Despite this being a little teeny 1x10 combo, I'm running it through a 4x12. So it's always worth looking at the reverse as well. Yes, you can funnel down a big powerful amp and use it practically, but you can also upscale a small amp. Hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, I've had a lot of rambling here. I've also been staring at this screen, so I haven't seen any of the live chat. So I just want to make sure I've not missed any questions, but I know that the guys from TwoNotes will be on the case. Let's just see if there's anything here. Okay. Yeah, I can see. So I just want to answer a question from Zavi, which was a little while ago. But he said, looking for first home studio monitors. I don't know which ones can be the best. Options are Yamaha HS5s or KRK Rockets. If those are your only options, there are better options on the market. But just as an example of those, the Yamahas are going to be a lot flatter response. The Rockets tend to be dipped in the mids, which makes them great for kind of, let's say, different styles of music to guitar playing, but you want that mid-range detail that the Yamahas will have with more clarity. Though I can see, I think the guys from TwoNotes have recommended a couple of other speakers as well below. Anyway, let's see what we got. Milos says, although being a bar owner in pandemic times, maybe it's best that I don't look at new gear. I feel your pain, my friend, but, let me just explain something, though. Because maybe this all seems extravagant, this all seems expensive. That unit there, the glories of which that I will continue to talk about for the rest of this video. I've only covered maybe a third of what it can do. $469 is the price currently on the Peach Guitars website. So for that, you're getting a reactive load. You're getting this amazing Torpedo Remote software that can control hundreds, if not thousands, of speaker IR presets. You're getting some actual global controls on the unit, which makes this much more usable than a lot of other speaker sims, which are just plug and play. You're getting an attenuator, and you have different options of running this. You can either run it dual mono, you can run it wet dry, you can run it in stereo, and so on. And there's a headphone socket as well. So you don't even need speakers. You don't need a computer. You don't need a speaker cab. You can plug headphones straight into it. Goodness gracious me, it's good. So that's I've kind of covered some of the speaker emulation side of it. But I have alluded to certain things here that are equally important, I feel, with this. So, sorry, let me just make sure I'm still up to date with the video. So I touched on a couple of things there, like the attenuator. So this amp has, this Captor X has a lot of power handling available, right? So I'm using a 25 watt amp at the moment, but I know that John has been playing at home with his 150 watt steel string Singer 2-Rock. No, it's not called that. What's it called? Something else. Silver Sterling, something like that, yes. So it can handle amps of that magnitude. So if you've got a big powerful valve amp at home that you haven't been using because it's too powerful for any of your speaker cabs, or just using it at 0.5% of its volume range blows out your windows, this has the power handling for it, and it has a 3-step attenuator, which you can't see on the front panel. It's on the back. There's a little 3-position toggle, which takes you from full volume, then they kind of term it, I think, like a club volume, and then home volume. So it's got 3 increments of different attenuation, and it works really well. I would have had this hooked up today, but this is the 8 ohm version, and I've got a 16 ohm cab, so I didn't want to mismatch there, but there are 16 ohm versions of this unit available as well. So whatever your amp is, there is a version of the Captor X for you, and you can use it with your speaker cab as well. So to have a reactive load, to have speaker simulation, and to have an attenuator on board is quite cool. I don't know of anything else that does that in a format that's this compact. Also, I talked about some of the stuff that's on the front panel. So you might not be able to see from the video, but let me tell you what's there. Over here on the left, there's an output level control, which is what it says on the tin. It's what I'm sending to the computer right now. Hopefully you can still hear me, by the way. The middle one is a voicing control, and I just want to show you what that does, because that is really effective. So and this is what I always forget it's there. I get the sound dialed up, and I'm kind of thinking, oh, I'm not necessarily 100% happy with it. But the voicing option allows you to basically just have a global EQ after everything. So if you don't want to go back in and dive into the lists of IRs and stuff like that, speaker sims, you can just change the character with the voicing control. It's set pretty neutral right now. It's at 12 o'clock. And there is a little indent as well to let you know that it's not doing anything. But I'm just going to play a couple of notes and scale through the voicing control, and you'll hear how drastically it changes the sound of the guitar. Now that probably sounded a little bit drastic as I was sweeping through. I went from all the way counterclockwise to all the way clockwise, and basically Counterclockwise is you're adding loads of mid-range, and as you move it clockwise, you're thinning it out and you're losing the mid-range. So when you sweep from one to the other, it's kind of like it sounds pretty drastic, but in isolation, each of those tones is really cool. I actually really enjoyed scooping the mids. Metallica suddenly leapt out of this 1x10 combo. And then all the way to the left, it's more of that really thick boogie voicing. And I didn't touch the amp once. Okay, so you're not going to want to do that all the time. But if you want to use it subtly to just change the EQ curve of your amp after everything's been set up, after you've got the response from the IR that you like, after you've set the amp up the way you like, you can do that with that voicing control. It's really powerful. I sometimes forget that it's there, but it's one of the best features of this unit, I feel. So the one on the far right is the space control, and that kind of adds in, I guess, what it infers. It's just kind of beefs up the tone. It adds in a little bit of an ambient kind of tone. Not necessarily like a room mic sound, because that's not always what you want. But let me just show you what it does. I'll turn it all the way off. I'll put it back in the middle where it is now, and I'll turn it all the way up. And let's see what it's going to do. I might go back to clean, actually, so you can hear it a little more clearly. So I'm going to turn it all the way off, halfway, all the way up. Don't know how well that's going to convey over YouTube, actually, because I was struggling to hear a drastic difference, but I've heard it before, and it does just kind of emphasize some of the air around the notes, and that can be really useful, again, because sometimes speaker sims and IRs and things like that are really cut and dry, and having that space control, I mean, I've just set it halfway for the whole duration of this video up to this point, and it just adds in a nice touch of air. Not necessarily that room mic thing, like I said, but it does do something nice to the tone. So that's kind of almost everything that's on board, but you've also got headphone control, which is right at the front, which is really nice. I think the guys in the chat will be able to tell me if this is true, but I think that maybe the output level control also determines the headphone volume control, so you can use it as a volume for that. And then you've got over here a 6, I believe, position preset control. So if I just jump back to the app, which you should see on the screen, up here you can store presets locally or on the Torpedo itself. So you can see there's a bunch of presets here, some that are stock, a couple that we've made. In fact, why not? I'll just show you the one that I made before. So this is a pair of greenback IRs that I've loaded in. These are Celestion IRs, which sound really good. So I'm going to show you clean what it sounds like with IRs, and you've got independent control. That now, rather than having the two mics, you've got independent levels for each of the two IRs. Hopefully you can see this at the bottom of the screen. So let's see what it sounds like. So that's just quite a nice fat sound. But that's, like I said, that's a purpose-built kind of different preset that I had. This one, I'm going to go back to what we had before because it's a little easier to show you what you'd be dealing with. But I just wanted to show you that you can work IRs into this thing if that's the way you're used to recording as well. Right, let's go back to kind of where we were before. I think I had the 412, the Recto 412. Okay, so let me just show you that one more time, and then what I'm going to do is switch to the other amp. I want to show you the orange, how it responds with a bigger amp as well. So I'm going to just turn off the reverb and the EQ and the enhancer. We should be back where we were a few minutes ago. I just really like that sound. I always like 412 kind of models anyway, generally speaking, but sometimes with a clean sound, it doesn't always translate that well. Like I said, it can be a bit stale. It's not the case with this, though, because the models are so good. Right, I'm going to provide a little bit of dead air for you while I switch over these amps. But while I'm doing that, make sure you jump in the live chat. If you've got a question for the guys from TwoNotes, or a question for me that I haven't got around to answering, then drop it in there, and they will facilitate a very good answer for you while I just switch over these amps, okay? Okay, so you're hearing now a totally different scenario. Rather than a little 25-watt Mesa Boogie, I've got a 100-watt Orange Rock Reverb. Haven't changed anything, though, from the last clip you heard on the clean channel of this amp, so you're still hearing the Mesa 412. But I wanted to purposefully clean up on the guitar, because I think sometimes the thing that puts the term modeling off for people, and I know I keep calling this part of the modeling world, but I think it's just the easiest way to understand what it's doing. It's modeling a speaker cabinet. The thing that can put people off is that you lose the dynamic sensibility between the guitar and a valve amp. Obviously, you don't have that because I'm still using a valve amp, so you can still clean up on the guitar. It responds in the way that your amp responds, but everything after that point is digitized and just so easy to work with. So, okay, I've kind of talked a lot of blabber about the technical stuff that this does. Let's just see if we've got any more questions in here, because I want to just clear something up. Earlier on, in the Instagram post that you may have seen introducing this, I did say that there's going to be a giveaway. So, what the guys from TwoNotes have decided to do is, to whoever provides the best question in the live chat, they will be giving away a cab pack for free. So that's why I want you to come up with as good a question as you can in this live chat, because whoever gets the best question is going to win a cab pack. What the cab pack does provides obviously additional cabinet models, not only for the Capture X, but if you have an existing TwoNotes product like the Cab M as well, which I've got here, which I'll talk about in a second, then it'll work for this as well. And the reason I'm not using this and I'm using the Capture X is because, like I said, I feel that that is the best all-in-one solution. It can do the attenuation, it can do the voicing on the amp, it can obviously provide all the speaker stuff as well. The Cab M, though, is if you don't need the attenuator, if you don't need some of the features that are on the Capture X, the reactive load, for example, if you just want to plug and play, like in a live situation, for example, and you just want the speaker models, and everything that I've shown you on the remote app applies to this as well, and the cab packs that you stand to win apply to this as well. If you just want that, this is a great way to go too. But as a complete package, the Capture X, I feel, is the best way to go. So, get your questions in, because it's going to be interesting. Let me just check that there's nothing that's fallen through the cracks. I think the guys have covered pretty much everything so far. All right, so keep the questions coming in. Until that point, though, I want to show you some more tones with this orange. Because, like I said before, sometimes funneling 100 watts of power into a digital concept like this cannot pan out that well, but it works really, really well. So let me just show you some more tones. I'm on the gain channel of the amp. I've shown you some clean tones with this amp, so I'm just going to show you some sort of mid-gain crunchy tones. I wanted to try and show some higher gain, mid-gain, and some clean amp tones as well. So this kind of covered the clean and the high gain. The orange is going to cover the mid-gain stuff. Let's hear this orange through the Capture X. What I'm going to do now is change to a different cabinet. So you've heard so far the Mesa rectifier cab. Natural territory for this amp, though, is the orange cab. So I've got an orange 412 with vintage 30s here. Different mics, once again. It's going to sound really different. Let's see what it's like. Okay, for the fun of it, let's do the opposite and put the orange through a 1x12 cab. I'm going to go back to the Bella cab and just see what it does. This is the best thing about this, is you can just experiment and see what you like. Maybe some combinations may open up that you never thought of before, like earlier on with this amp with the Vox cab. This orange through a Sir 1x12 may or may not work, but let's see what it's like. Right, I tried a bunch of different stuff there. You know, you heard some different mics. You heard, I actually muted the second microphone as well. So there's just so much you can do. And I think the more I sit and play here is just going to kind of be redundant because there's so many options available. You're just going to find what you like by playing around. But there's a lot of familiar options there with the mic types. There's a lot of familiar options with the cabinets as well. Just the way it all works is going to be comfortable to you even if you've never used this before. Okay. Let me jump back here. Are the good questions coming in? Let's see. Let me scroll through. Vasilis says, we need some Friedman Cali action, Jack. I think a couple of cool Friedman guitars turned up today. They should be on the website quite soon. So you will be seeing some Friedman guitars very soon. But I wanted to go with home ground for today. Something I knew quite well to show you a bunch of different sounds. Okay. Let me see. I think Ulrich63 asks, can we mix external IRs and TwoNotes cabs in the software? I think that you can do, yeah. So that first preset I showed you before, where I'd put some IRs in, I previously had an IR mixed with one of the room sounds on this and ended up putting two IRs in. The guys will be able to clarify that for sure. If that, you know, that might have just been a fluke, but I'm pretty sure you can do that. I think you can mix them up. So hopefully that solves that one. Let me see what else we got. I'm trying to look for questions, but it looks like the guys are on this with the answers. So Scott Allen says, I wonder how your attenuator compares to the Iron Man attenuator, which is the proprietary Tone King amps attenuator. Any advantages besides the obvious upgrading features? So I personally feel that this one is usable in more situations because the Iron Man is kind of, it has a greater number of intervals and it does sound good at just shaving off a few decibels. Doesn't necessarily sound the same when you plummet it all the way down, whereas this one at the lowest setting is really quiet. So you can legitimately use this at home. I personally feel it works a little bit better with this one if you want to go for low volume. That's just my take on it. Okay. This is a very, very busy live chat. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing stuff. Let's see. Okay. Looks like pretty much everything's cleared up. Yeah, keep the questions coming in. We're going to keep this rolling for another 10 minutes or so. I guess all I can really do is just kind of talk through a few more of my thoughts with it. So kind of using other reactive load boxes. There's a lot out there on the market and they all have their own sort of sonic curve to them. Despite being reactive, they're all modeled after a certain thing that reacts, if you know what I mean. So different speakers come into the equation. With this one, this has got a really, really neutral foundation. So what I found with the TwoNotes Captor X is that you can really provide kind of any IR or speaker sim that you want into it, and the way that the load responds is a little bit more flat, which just means that you're hearing more of the character of the speaker model itself, if that makes sense. You know, there are other reactive loads available, like I say, that have more of a sonic curve to them, but this one is super, super flat, And I do actually quite like that because it means, like I say, you can just spend a lot of time in the software and get some really interesting combinations, and you're truly hearing the amp, the flat response, reactive load, and the speaker sims. So it works very, very well. Okay, Sebastian B, I just see a question's just popped in. What's your favourite amp and IR combination? Well, I really like Greenback 412, so if I jump back to the screen, let me find something that emulates that. I've got here a Brit 60A, which is a TwoNotes model of a Marshall 412, I presume with Greenback speakers. So with any amp, I think this sounds really good. With the orange that I'm plugged into right now, it sounds especially good because it's a Brit voiced amp. Let me show you what it sounds like. Something I find interesting with speaker models and IRs is to listen to the trail off, which you'll have heard there. I'll just play it again. Because sometimes that's where you'd hear some ugliness and some artifacts and some kind of non-real world, just effects on the sound. Doesn't seem to happen with this particular IR. I really like the sound of that. So that is a 1960A with a 57 and a condenser 87 on there as well. I think it sounds really good. Okay, let me jump back in and see if there's any other questions. Okay, James Green says, if I had amps at 8 and 16 ohms, theoretically, because you say I don't, but if I did, would I need 2 Captor X's, or would I get away with just 1? So, given the standard law of impedances with amplifiers, the guys, hopefully from TwoNotes, will back this up. It is safe to run a lower impedance amp into a higher impedance speaker cab, so the Captor X in this case is a speaker cab. I can see they've just answered this. So you could run, for example, an 8 into a Captor X 16. You couldn't run a 16 ohm amp into a Captor X 8 ohm because there's a reverse impedance mismatch there. But you find that the amp does react slightly differently. You lose a bit of power that way. So you want to keep everything matched if you can. And hopefully the guys here will confirm this as well. I think when you run your own speaker cab, so if I was using this orange cab, for example, the load in the reactive load, in the Captor X is bypassed. So you're using the load of whatever this is. So if you're using an 8 ohm amp into a 16 ohm cab, you need to accommodate for that, if you see what I mean. Anyway, the guys have answered it. They rightfully say you should probably just get 2. That makes sense. Okay. So, Sebastian B said, is this a contest? I'm a bit late. Basically, what we're doing is whoever can come up with the best question is going to win a cab pack for Captor X or for the Cab M, whatever you have. But it's getting a little bit thin, so guys, keep the questions coming in. I think I've answered a few of them, and the guys have been really on it with answering the majority of them. Let's see. I think we're pretty sparse here. Scott Allen earlier on says, are all the attenuators created equal? I have a Tone King amp as well as a Dr. Z attenuator, besides all the additional features on the TwoNotes. They're certainly not, though a lot of attenuators nowadays are very good. It depends on the way that they attenuate, of course. Though I have played some attenuators in the past that just drastically change the character of the amp. You can also get some clever additions, like, you know, attenuators that actually use a separate power amp. So then you're eliminating the actual power section tone of your amp entirely, and you're relying on a different power amp. With simple attenuators like this, though, I find the fewer features they have, often the better they sound. So with this one, just having a 3-position volume switch that's not continuous, it means that the tone is better, in my opinion. The others that you mentioned, the Tone King and the Dr. Z air brake, they are superb as well. Particularly the Dr. Z, I think sounds amazing, the air brake, because it's really simple. There's just 5 notches, I think, and then you've got the bedroom level control where you can really take it down. This is kind of like that, but even more simple. I think this works really well. And actually, the grades between the 3 levels are drastic, but they're all usable. So whatever volume setting you need, you'll find one of these settings will work for you. Okay. Anything else we got here? Testroyer, this is a little while ago, says, this is unrelated, but how did you set up the amp in the recent Iomi video, besides loud, as you described it? Surprised about how good it sounded. Although I wonder if it was the treble boost doing most of the work. The treble boost did do most of the work, but the amp was set pretty much as it is right now, just really loud and pretty clean. It was actually a bit cleaner than this, but of course today I'm not having to blow anyone's face off with volume because it's going through the Captor X, so you pretty much everything straight across the board apart from the volume, which was turn up full. So that hopefully answers that question. All right. Tony Emery, earlier on, this isn't a question, but it's just a statement. In the digital world, in my opinion, the cab, or impulse response, is at least 75 to 80% of the tone. I think you're quite right there, Tony, and I illustrated that earlier on by showing, this is probably what you were responding to, in fact, how using this Fender voiced amp, this Boogie, into a Fender voiced cabinet and then into a Vox voiced cabinet drastically changed the character of the amp. So you're quite right in that the IRs are making the biggest difference to the actual tone. The amp is just kind of the way the guitar feels. I feel, anyway. All right. Anything else coming in? Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll come on to that in a moment. So, right, there's a question here. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to answer this. Sebastian B says, is it possible to get a better sound from a bad amp or a not-so-great amp? Can you tweak the sound through the software? I mean, obviously, that's going to be very subjective. Let me try, just as an experiment. I'll make the orange sound as disgusting as I can, and I'll try and correct it with the TwoNotes voicing control. The orange is not a bad amp, so it's not going to sound gross, but let's just see if your point can be proven that you can use this to polish a proverbial turd. Let me try and make this sound disgusting first of all. All the bass and all the treble up and all the mids out. Let's see what it's like. Of that kind of scenario. So basically the answer is yes, you can change it. You won't change the sound of the amp itself. So if your amp is really buzzy and disgusting, then it's not really going to help. But there's a lot of stuff you can do just from the TwoNotes that will enable you to totally change the sound of the amp. But it's got to be a good amp in the first place. So the other thing I just want to talk about is the fact that TwoNotes make a lot of good stuff. I've talked a lot about the Capture X, obviously, and I touched on the Cab M. They also make these Preamp Pedals, which you'll hear another day, you'll hear in another video, but I grabbed one here, Le Preamp. This is the Crunch. There's a couple of different voicings available, but this can sit either totally independently, and you can use it just plugged into a Capture X or plugged into a Cab M and get your entire signal from this. Or you can use this in the effects loop of an amp with a real cabinet or with speaker modeling as well. There's a lot of stuff that these guys are capable of doing. These preamps, I haven't actually played one myself yet, but I've heard some clips that sound really cool. These are loaded with 12 AX7s in them as well, so it's a proper valve-driven preamp. So that's just something else to touch on there. Right, I want to make sure we've not got any questions that are being missed. What have you got to say? Okay. Right, what I'm going to do is jump through this minefield of a live chat and pick the winning question to who will get the cab pack. The winner will be contacted, or we will contact their. Sorry, we will contact the winner via Facebook or. Okay, the winner will contact us via Facebook or Instagram, however, whatever means you, and we'll sort it from there. Right, this is a three-way conversation here, but yeah. So whoever I pick here, will contact you basically. Let's see who's got the winning question. Steve Burrows, you've got a good question here. What if I want to play 3 notes? Hopefully I've illustrated that you can play a lot of notes with this. That is an amusing question. I don't think that counts as best question, I'm afraid. Let's see what... the problem with this is they're all very good questions, because they're all very practical questions that you guys have put in. I think I've got to give it to the guy who's been the most active here, Sebastian B. You've been caning it with questions, and they've all been really good. So there you are, Sebastian. We'll be in touch, and you can claim your cab pack for either a TwoNotes Capture X or a Cab M. Whatever you've got, or whatever you want to get, you'll have a bunch of additional cabs to work with as well. So there we are. That concludes the live chat and the live Q&A. Hopefully this has all made sense. I appreciate I've thrown a lot of information out there, but this has been an interesting concept to try and get across. Hopefully, though, you've learned some more about the Capture X and how cool it is. Thank you very much to the team from TwoNotes for joining in the live chat and making this as smooth as possible. I was skimming through trying to answer questions, but you guys had already done it for me, so I appreciate that. As usual, thanks a lot, everybody, for watching. I'll see you next week for another live Q&A. But there we are. I'll play you out. Why not? Thanks a lot for watching. Take care, guys.